YouTubers, this is Nurse J at Nursing the Truth, and this is my Trinity series of the day. Yes, video number 3. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed my latest 2 videos. So check those out, how Jesus scared the disciples. He was a ghost. And was John the forerunner of Jesus? Was he Elijah? Check that one out. So, we are back on this Josephus kick again, my friends. The dirty little forked-tongued man with his pen, acting as if he was another writer of antiquity, as usual. So, like I said, there were so many historical possible Jesuses of the first century or up until 100 BCE claiming for messiahship. So, I am going to give you some food for thought on some of these characters that Josephus talked about in his Antiquities of the Jews. Now, I will say this mythological character of Jesus dying, raising out of the dead for 3 days, going up on the mountain, transfiguration, all that kind of stuff, the blood, the Eucharist, is nothing but mythos, antiquity stuff, okay? But there's also, historical figures that they might want to take and rework and rewrite about. So, we're going to talk about Jesus ben Animus, Ananias. Sometimes he was referred to as Jesus of Jerusalem. Yes, my friends. And this man has been talked about in Josephus's Jewish Wars. And as a prophet in the 60s CE of the first century, we're not talking 30s, that was a reworking, he prophesied the temple destruction in 70 AD. Okay. Jerusalem turned him over to the Romans, who tortured him and scourged him. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So he talks about the temple destruction. There's not going to be one stone left upon another. And he gets spanked and whipped. He was declared a madman, and they released him. And this parallels with the Jesus and story in the Bible. But there's more. Both come to Jerusalem during a major religious holiday. Josephus talks about this in Jewish War at 6.30. And it's stated in Mark 14:2. See, I'm giving you parallels. So you can go to Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews or Jewish Wars and look this up for yourself. Remember, I gave you the historical Saul that they made into the fake Paul on the road to Damascus. Because I searched that, and I was not going to let Josephus' book go. I've had his book for 3 months now from the library. And I am going through that with a fine-tooth comb. And you have to get the truth out. Both entered the temple area and ranted against the temple. Jewish War 6.301. And that is in Mark 11:13-17. They both quote the same chapter in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 7:11, that was in Mark, and Jeremiah 7:34 in the Jewish War. Both preached daily in the temple. Jewish War 6.306 and Mark 14:49. Both declared woe unto Jerusalem and the Jews. Jewish War 6.304, 6.306, 6.309, and Mark 13:17. Both predicted the temple would be destroyed. Jewish War 6.300, 6.309, Mark 13, verse 2. Both are, for this reason, arrested by the Jews. Jewish War 6.302 and Mark 14:43. Both are accused of speaking against the temple. Jewish War 6.302 and Mark 14:38. Both makes defense of himself against the charges. Jewish Wars 6.302 and Mark 14:60. Both are beaten by the Jews, noted in Jewish War 6.302 and Mark 14:65. Both are taken to the Roman governor, which is Albinus in the Jewish War, and Pilate in Mark. Both are questioned by the Roman government, Jewish War 6.05 and Mark 15:2-4, during which both are asked to identify themselves. Jewish War 6.305 and Mark 15:2. Neither one of them says in any of his defense. Jewish War 6.305 and Mark 15:3-5. Both were beaten by the Romans, 6.304 and Mark 15:15. In both cases, the Roman governor decides he should release him, but doesn't in Mark. And he does in the Jewish War. In the Jewish War, this is cited at 6.309 and Mark 15:6-15. Both are finally killed by the Romans in Mark by execution in Mark 15:34, but in the Jewish War it was by artillery. 6.308 to 6.309. Both utter a lament for themselves immediately before they die. Jewish War 6.309 and Mark 15:34. Both die with a loud cry. Jewish War 6.309 and Mark 15:37. Wow. This basically goes through the whole story. I told you there was lots of Jesuses, and 7 out of 10 children's names were named that. But it wasn't Jesus, it was Yeshua or Yawashua. So, which means Yahweh saves or Yahweh salvation. So, you do have historical people that were historically written about. But then you can put the twist of mythological or mythology to go around that person. You see, I'm Nurse J, and you can write a book about Nurse J, but call her Susan and have all the attributes about Nurse J. But see, you're not giving Nurse J's real identity out. It's only Susan. So really, you could write anything about Nurse J and get away with it. So that's basically what they've done. They have screwed the minds of the masses. So we're all running around looking for this historical Jesus, you see. And no one has found him. Because they've got you on a rabbit trail. But we all know that the mythological Jesus does not exist. Now, other Jesuses, my dear truth seekers, pagans, atheists alike, were mentioned in Josephus's writings. And one was called Jesus, son of Onias, O-N-I-A-S. Jesus, the brother of John. Both of these Jesuses were priests. Did you hear me, truth seekers? Priests. And this, one of the brothers, were killed by John. Then we have Jesus, son of Damneus, D-A-M-N-E-U-S. Very important that you go get Josephus's book, my dear beloveds. The other prophets that were named by Josephus, it's called the Samaritan. Now, he said he would reveal the lost relics of the true Samaritan temple on Mount Gerizim. The Samaritans believed themselves to be the true Jews, alluded to in John 4 and 20 through 26. They also, the Samaritans, expected a Messiah. The original congregation led by Joshua stood upon Mount Gerizim. There was another person that Josephus spoke about called the Egyptian prophet. How interesting is this? He preached from the Mount of Olives, claimed he would topple the walls of Jerusalem, according to Zechariah 14, 1 through 9. And a Messiah would stand at the Mount of Olives in the last days. See, remember, Jesus preached on the Mount of Olives to a lot of people. Then there was an unnamed impostor. He promised his followers salvation if they followed him into the wilderness. It's an obvious reference to Moses, and he promised rest in the wilderness and deliverance from evil. Then there was a Theudas, Theudas. When Theudas was procurator of Judea, that a certain magician persuaded a great part of the Jewish people to take their effects with them and follow him to the river Jordan. For he told them he was a prophet and that he would, by his own command, divide the water and afford them an easy passage over it, and many were deluded by his words. However, Theudas didn't promote them to make any advantage of his wild attempt, but sent a troop of horsemen out against them, who, falling upon them unexpectedly, slew many of them and took many of them alive. They also took Theudas alive and cut off his head and carried it into Jerusalem. This was what befell the Jews in the time of fattest governments. Rabbi Gamaliel, speaking of the rising of Theudas, speaking this before AD 37, links it to the revolt of Judas of Galilee in 6 CE. The revolt of Theudas took place in around 45 AD. Kind of funny. His head got cut off, and it kind of reminds us of John the Baptist. Was John the Baptist really Theudas? Something to think about. So Hegabus and Clement of Alexandria agree that James died alone by the hands of an angry mob. No reference to this in Acts per se. Luke would have mentioned the fate of James. You see, in the Antiquities of the Jews, book 20, chapter 9, why would Josephus mention the trial of the brother of Jesus? Who is Jesus? Why is Animus after his brother? You see, there were so many interpolations in the Catholic encyclopedias of the Testimonium Flavium that Josephus wrote about Jesus was heavily interpolated. So anything that was written of Jesus or of James with Jesus was interpolated by that dirty joker Eusebius. So you have real people that they're trying to piece players to make it a real story. See, there really was a man named James. And there was a real man named Saul. And Saul had brothers. And he had children. And he was a Herodian. But he never changed. So James died, they say, in 63 CE, but now the Antiquities say he died around 69. And what started this big war and the tumbling down of the Roman and Jew war was because James was killed. And he did have a brother named Jesus, but he was a high priest. So if you read pseudo-Clementines or Clementine recognitions, and you can read this online for free, my little truth seekers, because I've read it. And it clearly states that they stoned James and threw him off the temple. And then it talks about this wicked priest that they wouldn't give a name to him. But they said that took a rod iron and smashed James with it. See, a lot of the church fathers like Origen, Justin Martyr, and things of that nature. Tertullian had a big, massive hand in writing all these wonderful stories. And see, with the Antiquities of the Jews being put out, quote, written at 95, there was no Gutenberg printing press. And Josephus's book is very, very thick. So if you think that people are running around with numerous copies, sadly mistaken. The Roman Empire had censors, my dear friends. That's where you get the word censorship. Just like they censorship your YouTube videos. So they had to look at everything. Now, some of these people were lazy and they missed a few things. Or did they not on purpose? You know, maybe there could be some truth to some of the people back in the day where they wanted us to find out. Maybe they had guilt. Did they have a guilty conscience? Did the Romans have a guilty conscience? I don't think so. So I'm going to let you go with that. I thought I would share the different Jesuses, and I'm going to come up with another video. So hang tight, my truth seekers, Gnostics, pagans, atheists, whatever you want to be called. But I'm going to go to the Egyptian spirituality way, old Kemet alchemy. Because everything comes from our blessed Egypt and our God Thoth with wisdom and knowledge. And Ptah, the supreme creator, Enki Ptah. So guys, that's just where it's at. I'm going to keep bringing you truth, and every day I look for truth in my life, and that's just how it's going to be from now on out. So search for the truth, you guys, and when Nurse J brings you the truth, let the truth set you free. Hotep and Ashe, and we will see you shortly.